Good evening and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about, of course, untapped mineral potential of Pakistan at this time. As a nation driven by a young, skilled workforce, blessed with some of the world's most promising untapped resources, we'll be talking about what is the potential of this resource for Pakistan in terms of our economy, in terms of investor confidence, in terms of our regional dynamic with other countries, and also internationally when we talk about cooperation with countries like the US also. A little later on, we'll also be talking about where we are with regard to talks with Afghanistan, and of course Pakistan's long enduring patience has now turned thin when of course we say that it is conditional upon actionable consequences of what's happening with regard to the Afghanistan from across the border, the Afghan Taliban, and what they can do for Pakistan. We'll be talking about all of that today on Perspective. I have with me Dr. Manzoor, who's a former ambassador, WTO. Thank you
very much
for being with us today. We have with us Dr. Abid Sulehri and other during the course of the program. Dr. Manzoor, of course, you know, it's one of those things that are being talked about everywhere at this time. The potential of this untapped resource for Pakistan. How do you see it, first of all?
Well, previously there was a lot of talk, and now some action on the ground is taking place. For example, Ricodec, for a long time it was held up in international courts and all that, and now I think they already started working on it. And Ricodec is about more copper, gold, and these prices are now very high up. So the things are already starting. I think this is, and then you know, recently the US has shown a lot of interest in rare earths and also in petroleum and in crude oil. I mean, in you know, exploring these minerals from energy.
In terms of investment, of course, you know, we know that it's of interest lately, but how do you see it translating? How do you see it becoming, you know, perhaps that resource that can really change things for Pakistan?
Well, for a while, investment was, you know, not coming from anywhere. And I think last month, 2 months ago, when the Prime Minister was in China, and they signed a lot of joint ventures, for, about 1.5 billion, and another investment of memorandum of understandings are about 7 billion. So that's on the Chinese side, that we are resuming this CPEC 2. And then there is the US investment, etc., that is being talked about. And so the investment, I think, after being stuck for a while, will start flowing in soon.
In terms of, you know, when we say that it will start flowing soon, like you said, building investment confidence, building investor confidence, which is what has been on the agenda of this government for a long time. Since it came into governance, of course. How are you looking at this motivating that? As far as opening the door, you know, when we look at, of course, the US interest also, for example, is it going to open the door for it?
Well, I should think so. Previously, for the last 2-3 years, the talk was mostly about Pakistan defaulting, and now that risk seems to be over. So you know, there's more stability about exchange rate, the foreign exchange reserves are building up, and all these things. I think there's stability. So I think there should be investment coming in for these factors.
When you look at trade and sectoral opportunities for foreign investors, you know, of course, yesterday we were talking about this, and it also hinges on a lot of groundwork that Pakistan needs to do. Am I right?
Yes, you're very right. But Pakistan fortunately has done some groundwork.
Okay.
In this year's budget, for the first time, I think the World Bank calls it, they haven't seen this kind of reforms anywhere in the last 10 years, any developing country. So we have started serious reforms. So this groundwork is taking place.
Do you see it continuing? Do you see more, you know, reform, and in what area particularly?
Yes, I see it continuing because they announced a 5-year program.
Okay.
So the first year program has already been implemented. So hopefully, because if they had not declared it, maybe it would have been difficult. But I think they've already set a program where they're going to be next year and over the next 5 years. So all the program is set. So I do see that this will continue.
In terms of regionally, when we look at the interest, of course, that we've seen come from the US side, other than, of course, I mean, diplomatically, that's a separate story for us and our relationship with the US. In terms of economy, how much of it is going to pave the way for us? When we talk about US interest particularly.
Yes. You see, if the political relations improve, then economic relations follow suit. So, you know, when the US, when we had these problems, we were not seeing any US investors coming in. Now more and more are coming in. They are especially interested in minerals. They are especially interested in IT and all these things where they were previously not really. For a while they were not interested, and now I think more and more of them.
You're saying that the ball is definitely rolling now.
Yes, yes, the ball.
Let me also take Dr. Abid Sulehri, who's a senior economist. He's with us now. Dr. Abid, we're talking about how this, you know, as far as rare minerals are concerned, and particularly US interest in them, can pave the way for other investors and perhaps has already set the ball rolling for Pakistan. Do you agree with that?
Well, one can say that almost half of the work is done, and that's on the external side. Externally, Pakistan has recently accomplished huge successes on geopolitical front as well as on conventional fronts in the war. Pakistan's standing in the nations has improved significantly, and with it, of course, Pakistan's credit rating and credit worthiness. When it comes to this turning all these successes into a pivotal moment where the mines and mineral exploration can be made successful, I think there we need a bit of more homework, and most importantly, that is regarding the security situation, especially in Balochistan, where we know that there's abundance of both rare earth mineral as well as minerals. Likewise, when we talk of converting all these successes into foreign direct investment, again, the internal situation needs to be controlled, and I'm talking of this political polarization as well as the pressure politics, and one is very happy to see the way federal government and Punjab government, they dealt with the TLP and they are dealing with the other such pressure groups. One cannot forget that when the Saudi Arabian delegation was there for investment negotiation in Lahore and meeting with the Chief Minister of Punjab, half of the Lahore was blocked and barricaded due to this TLP insurgency. So it's more now the onus lies on our internal preparedness, whether we are prepared and whether we can provide the conducive environment for our external partners that they can come, they can invest in Pakistan, and especially they can explore the minerals and mines in case of Balochistan.
Dr. Sulehri, of course, you know, in terms of security, of course, is of a concern that and a viable concern, and you know, is Pakistan state and the government at this time is dealing with that. But even in terms of fiscal improvements that are IMF backed, Pakistan struggles to attract consistent FDI, and you know, policy shifts or institutional reforms, some of them, it seems, it is believed are still needed. Do you agree with that?
And of course, there is always a room for improvement, and reforms are always needed and required. The ray of hope is that both the caretaker finance minister, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, and current finance minister, Senator Aurangzeb, they are very consistent and prudent in their approach to fulfill Pakistan's commitments with the IMF, and that's the reason Pakistan very easily secured Resilience Support Fund as well as cleared the first two staff level reviews of the current fund facility. And now that actually provides the basis for recovery. It still hasn't provided the basis for stability and long-term stability in economy. That would definitely come through consistent perusal of these reforms, ensuring that there are no exceptions in rules, and ensuring improved rule of ease of doing business. Now, some of the reforms are still on way, and I'm referring to reforms in regulatory regimes. I think our regulators, they still require a more consistent approach. The regulators, they need to be independent from the ministries or the functions that they are regulating. And that would actually help foreign direct investors to come and invest in this country. The second important progress in and development in this regard would be when Pakistan would be releasing its governance and corruption assessment report that is jointly prepared by Government of Pakistan and IMF. It would again be very transparently highlighting the strengths and the weaknesses in the system. The strengths, they would give assurance to potential investor, and weaknesses, of course, both the government of Pakistan as well as IMF, they are determined to improve those weaknesses, which would be, again, an assuring factor to any foreign direct investor that, yes, Pakistan is mindful of these loophole, and Pakistan is doing its level best.
So much. Thank you so much, Dr. Abid Sulehri. Thank you for your very valuable input. I'm going to go in the studio with Dr. Manzoor here. Dr. Mansoor, also, as far as our strategic location is concerned, we look at South, Central and West Asia, and Pakistan links that. In terms of our resource potential in, for example, copper, gold, rare earth minerals, what role can economic diplomacy, in your opinion, play in attracting global stakeholders? To projects that align with Pakistan's long-term developmental goals?
Well, more recently, this SCO is where China, Russia,
yes,
Pakistan, all these major countries, developing countries are involved. This has become very active. We had a leaders conference here in Islamabad,
yes,
then one in
yes,
China. And I think there's a lot of interest. SCO has a lot of interest on establishing these corridors so that these countries can get linked up. So I think this finally, although we are having problem in our neighborhood with India and Afghanistan, but SCO is more than that. It looks at Central Asia and then China and then Russia and then connecting on with Europe. So I think things will move in the right direction.
When we talk, the world at this time seems focused on rare minerals. It seems, and is it, in your opinion, a long-standing trend, or do you think that it's a sustainable one? Because we've known that these things sometimes are short-lived, but how do you see this potential?
I mean, potential is huge. The problem with rare earths is that it's the processing, and China has all the technology. World's 90%, over 90% of China. But I think China maybe has problem with other countries, but it doesn't really have a problem with Pakistan. It's not letting its machinery being used, etc., because of international problems, because of terror, because of Trump's putting them. But I think with Pakistan, we have the best of relationships, and we have these minerals. So maybe China would be more willing to help here.
You think that we are also perhaps uniquely placed at this time to be able to do it, balance this with the US and China also?
Yes, that's what it seems so far. The US is very keen on Pakistan, and so is China. We didn't see any problems So we have a very balanced approach for the time being, yes.
In terms of successful diplomacy translating into economic gains,
Yes.
do you think this is the time for it?
Yes, this is the time for it. Because for years we had problems with the US, so they were kind of, they were more inclined towards India. And recently, it seems that US is very much inclined towards Pakistan. And especially after that skirmishes with India,
Yes.
I think they realized the importance
The world
of
has
Pakistan.
also realized.
The whole world noticed. And so in the past, they used to think that, India is up there and Pakistan is nowhere, but that has changed. So that's what they're considering about Pakistan. China was always close to Pakistan, but then these other countries were not really that much. So now they are showing, I mean, we just signed this agreement with Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Saudi Arabia previously was signing all those with India and all this Middle East, and look anywhere. I mean, they're more interested now in Pakistan.
Right. Overall, I also want to talk about, investment climate at this time in the world. Of course, how the world is at this time faring economically. And what do you see global trends that are going to dictate things for us on the home front also?
Well, frankly, globally, there's uncertainty. Uncertainty because of US. US is the world's #1 economy. And currently, they're changing their tariffs every other day. They're announcing one day this thing and then lifting another. Now, this week, they just agreed with something on trade with China. But you don't know how they'll behave in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Frankly, we don't really have a problem because we signed up with the US, but many other countries. So globally, there's uncertainty, investment, because when there is uncertainty, people don't like to invest. So there's a problem. Globally, you asked me about globally, and there's a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Globally, you're saying there's uncertainty, but things are good on, as far as the regional front is concerned for us, particularly with Pakistan at this time.
Yes.
Because you said, we are uniquely placed at this time to be able to balance relationships and then have them translate into economic gains for us.
Yes, as far as Pakistan is concerned, with all major powers like the United States, like China, like the European Union, like Japan, we are not into any problems with any of these countries. Yes.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, Dr. Manzoor Ahmed. Thank you for your very valuable input on what rare earth minerals can do for us in terms of investment, in terms of trade. We're going to be moving on to other guests during the course of the program, in which we'll be talking about, of course, the Afghan talks, and of course, which the next phase of which are going to be held on the 6th, and what can happen with regard to these talks, whether we can see an actual result. We've been talking about this for a while in terms of course, the lack of sincerity that has come from the other side with regard to Pakistan and Afghan Taliban and the talks. Of course, we are also looking at mediation. We've also clearly said that we want there to be sustainable action. Of course, border management is extremely important with regard to what the future will hold in terms of what modalities are set between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban. With India's nexus, what we are looking at with their involvement, which is invariably we've seen with regard to, of course, a disinformation campaign, apprehension of that even yesterday, when of course a fisherman was apprehended. We are also looking at the same time interference by India when we look at the eastern and western borders, when they can't come overtly, they are coming through Afghanistan. So we're going to be talking about the future of this in light of Pakistan at this time, when Pakistan continues to be able to balance its relationships, whether we look at China, whether we look at the US, whether we look at Saudi Arabia, and in the light of that, now our ability at this time to be able to move forward and come to a written agreement with the Afghan Taliban that of course involves Turkey also, which also involves Qatar, and we want to, of course, we are hoping that this agreement will translate into, like I said, written and concrete set of modalities which then the Afghan Taliban will have to follow. We have with us Mansoor Ahmed Khan, who is a former ambassador of Afghanistan. Thank you for joining us. Mansoor sir, in terms of these talks now, first of all, of course, the next round is on the 6th. Where do you think we're at this time, both the delegations?
You know, the two countries on this cross-border terrorism issues, and particularly Pakistan's concern of continuing and increasing cross-border terrorism by TTP, BLA and such groups in Pakistan in provinces of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, and this terrorism continued to increase in last 3-4 years since Taliban took over power in August 2021. So we saw in the last 1 month or last 5-6 weeks, we saw a lot of escalation, military escalation. Pakistan undertook some military strikes. Then Afghan side also undertook some aggression against Pakistan on the borders. And as a result of this military escalation, our friendly countries, Qatar and Turkey, offered mediation, offered their good offices to help. As a result of that, we saw a ceasefire has been now in shape. It is being observed by the two sides. It was agreed in Doha. In the last round in Turkey, where the two sides were engaged in the efforts to negotiate a mechanism based on verifiable intelligence to be shared by the other side. For example, Pakistan sharing intelligence with the Afghan side on the presence of TTP fighters or BLA fighters or other such groups on Afghan soil, and expecting Afghan side to take an action. So that kind of, in principle, the two countries have agreed on joint monitoring mechanism, but in practice, they have to agree on the modalities of what this framework would be, what this mechanism would be. And now on the 6th of November, the two sides are going to again meet after some break. I think they have now received fresh instructions from their capitals in Islamabad and Kabul, and hopefully that the two sides will show maturity, and the two sides will try to reach an agreement on some contours, some kind of conclusion on this mechanism. Pakistan and Afghanistan have been.
Ambassador, when we look at, I want to go a little bit back. When we look at our relationship with, Afghanistan, Pakistan has been, always facilitating them in many shapes and forms. Why is there this hostility between the Afghan Taliban, now? Why is our relationship where it is at this time, in your opinion?
I think it's a much deeper issue, because I've been dealing with Afghanistan for past 2 decades. This Pakistan-Afghanistan border of 2,600 kilometer long border, it has been a battleground for cross-border militancy, insurgency or terrorism since past 4-5 decades. It was in 80s Afghan Jihad, later in 90s civil war and proxy struggles. Then from 2001 to 2021, US and NATO forces were there. Afghan Taliban were fighting an insurgency, and most of the insurgency was shaping up from the border region between Pakistan and Afghanistan. When Taliban came into power in 2021, and I was ambassador there in Kabul at that time, Pakistan's expectation was that now the groups which had been TTP or BLA, which had been using Afghan soil in past 10-15 years, their activities will go down. There will be a decline. There will be a reduction in their activities. But because of the basically trust difference between the two sides, again because of the past 4 or 5 decades of militancy and terrorism that has taken place in this region, I think Pakistan and Afghanistan were not able to develop that kind of confidence-based relationship which was necessary for forming some kind of security mechanism. And since that mechanism is not there, TTP and BLA have been using Afghan soil. They have been present on Afghan soil. When Pakistani side had negotiations with TTP in 2022, they were there. Their main commanders were there. Their main commanders are still on Afghan soil. And that is where I think the two countries will have to come up with a mechanism, with a joint monitoring mechanism, whereby if Pakistan provides an intelligence to the Afghan side, or if Afghan side shares intelligence with Pakistan side, the two sides will be bound to take an action, and there will be some guarantors like Qatar or Turkey or some other countries like Saudi Arabia can also become guarantors, because now these countries have diplomatic relations with the Afghan Taliban regime. So, in my view, the establishment of a mechanism is actually of fundamental importance for moving forward, and therefore, either on 6th November or in the days following that, the two sides will have to come up with a mechanism. Otherwise, this, instability in the relations, your basic question about instability, trust deficit in their relations will continue. So the only way at this stage to move forward is to agree on some kind of mechanism and then move forward from there.
But in terms of agreement, in terms of guarantors, we've also put irrefutable evidences in front of the Afghan Taliban of cross-border militancy, of cross-border terrorism that stems from the Afghan Taliban's territory. Do you think that there is sincerity from the Afghan Taliban side when in coming to a solution for both sides, first of all?
Yeah, I think both Afghanistan and Pakistan have to look forward to their national interests. Afghanistan is currently in a very difficult shape, is facing serious challenges since Afghan Taliban came into power. The country is not internationally recognized. There are economic sanctions against them. Pakistan, with 2,600 kilometer long border, offers them a lot of opportunity for economic connectivity, for trade, transit, and connectivity between South Asia and Central Asia. So, if the two countries have to move towards realization of this potential of developing regional connectivity between Central Asia and South Asia and beyond, I think they will have to overcome this challenge of terrorism, the cross-border terrorism. So it is, I think, in the interest of both the countries to overcome whatever impediments they have been facing. Afghan Taliban, since they came into power and they have now assumed the state of Afghanistan, they are running the government there. They have to understand that they are not an insurgent group now, but rather they are a responsible government. They are a government of a responsible country. And similarly, Pakistan also has to, find or explore ways of developing a state-to-state relationship with Afghanistan, whether it is ruled by Afghan Taliban at the moment, or whether it was ruled in the past by some other country, some other political party, or in future it can be ruled by some other any political group or party. So the two countries have.
Do you think that Pakistan, the people of Afghanistan, have been of particular concern to the Afghan Taliban, in terms of the plight of their own people, economically, the women, the children? They don't seem, and this was earlier also discussed when we were talking about it, they don't seem to be particularly concerned about their own people.
Afghanistan today has 40 million population, 40 million people. 4 crore, 4 crore or 40 million people are living in Afghanistan today. And 65% of these people comprise youth, and more than 50% is women, comprises women. So I think it is very important for any government in Afghanistan, this time the government is of Afghan Taliban, to be cognizant of the aspirations of Afghan people. And the Afghan people, they want normal living, they want the rights of women and children to be given to them. The girl child should be going to school. Afghan Taliban have imposed certain restrictions which are not normal according to the international standards of human rights, like not allowing girls to go to high school or schools and higher education. So I think gradually Afghan Taliban will have to realize that they have to add some inclusivity in their governance setup, so that it is not just an exclusive Taliban regime, but a broader government. They have to evolve some kind of constitutional structure for running Afghanistan, and they have to then take care of human rights, including rights of women, children, and media freedoms. Similarly, they have to also be part of international counter-terrorism framework so that groups like Al-Qaeda, Daesh, or regional terrorist groups like TTP, BLA, ETIM, IMU, they cannot again make Afghanistan a theater of terrorism and warfare in the coming decades. So I think it is very important for Afghan Taliban that Afghanistan has now come forward. The people of Afghanistan expect normal living and normal living governance structure from Afghan Taliban, and the structures should respond to the aspirations of the people there. So I think yes, they will have to, and for doing that, I think since Pakistan is the biggest neighbor, they have to have good relations or workable relation with Pakistan.
One hopes that they do have that consideration, like you said. But what is this nexus with India then? You know, we saw the press conference. We saw, of course, you know, we have for a time known about the relationship, but now it seems to be out. So what is behind this nexus with India when they know that, you know, they need to have a good relationship with Pakistan as a neighbor, like you said?
Yes, I think you're right. Afghanistan-Pakistan relationship has always been affected in one way or another by Afghanistan's relations with India. From 2001 to 2021, when US and NATO forces were present in Afghanistan, the then governments and then institutions of Afghanistan provided a lot of space to Indian intelligence institutions for investing in groups like TTP or BLA or other anti-Pakistan groups, and that's why these groups became very strong. These groups just did not become strong because of the Taliban. These groups became strong because of the investment by the Indian governments or Indian security institutions in those groups during the presence of US and NATO forces in Afghanistan. Now, after Taliban came into power, it was important for Pakistan and Afghanistan to develop a trust-based relationship. Since Afghanistan, Pakistan continued to have differences even after Taliban assumed power in Afghanistan, and then these differences continue to expand. So we are seeing that recently India has again started making or started taking measures to expand its space again in Afghanistan, and through which it can again harm Pakistan through various supporting various terrorist groups. So I think that is where it will be very important for Afghanistan and Pakistan to focus on their bilateral relationship, take care of the threat of terrorism, evolve some kind of joint security mechanism, and then develop people-to-people relationship, open the border, and start economic activities there. If Pakistan-Afghanistan relations remain strained, then India will definitely find an opportunity to invest in Afghanistan in an anti-Pakistan agenda.
Right, fair enough. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Please stay with us. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Dr. Waqar Khan, who's a defense analyst. Dr. Waqar, we've been talking to Mansoor Ahmed also, and you know, the fact that, of course, India's involvement. And we saw the statement that came from, Defense Minister also, when he said that India is now, of course, doing their interference not only, you know, from overtly also and through Afghanistan also. So in that kind of a situation, how do you see things normalizing between Afghanistan and Pakistan?
I think rhetoric besides, basically Afghanistan should also be seen as a state and Taliban seen as a regime, and then there are people of Afghanistan. I think they're very less focused on Afghanistan as a state in Pakistan. Basically, we consider probably Taliban regime is Afghanistan. It's not the case. There's a World Bank report now which has come out, which actually paints a very bleak picture, especially because of return of refugees, because there's going to be enormous pressure on the labor market. Already, I think there's 1 crore and 70 lakh, basically low-skilled labor. They are staring at hunger in this winters because if you look at the economy, Pakistan actually been importing 24% of Afghan exports. And similarly, it's also a major source of imports for Afghanistan. Then is the Afghan transit trade. So this is the situation. 20 million women are locked up. So all told, I think ultimately we should not consider that Afghan people are naive or you don't understand, because now there's a lot of pressure coming from inside. Like Badakhshan, there's the news of insurgency and people not liking. Women definitely would not like to be locked up. We in Turkey have some of the friends here in the diaspora, and they actually feel that there are a couple of reasons why Taliban is having this policy. They believe, one, there's lack of literacy. Like they said, they are almost unpart, most of the leadership. Then you have basically arrogance. This is a false arrogance of defeating superpowers and all that. So that has basically created, and then there is a huge oppression. They say that even women are not considered as human beings. So this is from, I would say, literate Afghan. So if that is the kind of state that they want to run, and they want to become a proxy of India, I think in the long run they will have serious problems of governance, because that is the major thing. When you govern, you're supposed to provide security to your people, feed them, and then have some future. Like if you look at diaspora, main question to be asked from Taliban: why millions of Afghans in Pakistan and Iran don't want to go back? This is a very fundamental question. Nobody wants to go back willingly. So I think this is the state of the state. Now we come to the policy. I think Taliban has been taking Pakistan for granted. One, since 2021, I would say that Pakistan has been making great efforts. Diplomatic isolation. First investment conference was held in Islamabad, I remember, when Taliban came. And Pakistan has been pleading their case for diplomatic recognition. And in return, I think we got was mainly terrorism. And as the figures say, there's 500% increase in terrorist attacks. So it means that probably they thought Pakistan was a pushover, soft power, and then they could, basically draw concession, maybe settlement of TTP, and then this drama of Durand Line. So all told, I think there was a huge miscalculation. And if you look in the region, Afghanistan regime, Taliban regime, and India too now, I would say states in the region are totally isolated. Nobody wants to talk to them. So I think they're given a fair chance that they should settle the issues with Pakistan, especially of terrorism, and then we can have normal relationship. But in case they have any doubts, I think it's going to have serious impact. So let's split the state, the people, and the Afghan regime or Taliban regime, and talk about them separately. There is definitely a huge issue within Afghanistan.
Right, fair enough. Let me go to Ambassador Saab, and then I'll come back to you. Ambassador, when we look at the future of these talks, would you still describe them as fragile? Because of course 6th is just around the corner, and we are also looking at some reports that perhaps the delegation there needed to go back and seek further instructions from in terms of what could and whether they could move forward or not. How are you looking at that? Please unmute yourself. Ambassador, you're muted.
Sorry. The good thing was that in the several rounds that took place in Istanbul a few days ago, at the end of those rounds, the two sides in principle agreed on a statement which was issued by the government of Turkey, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkey, in which it was agreed that the ceasefire will be observed, and that the two sides in principle have agreed to establishment of a joint monitoring mechanism. So now when they have in principle agreed to a mechanism, now it is important for the two sides to develop modalities of the mechanism and agree on those modalities. Now Pakistan and Afghanistan have been negotiating such monitoring mechanisms in the past too. I remember in 2015, 16, 17, 18, we were discussing such mechanisms, and we had agreed on an Afghanistan-Pakistan action plan for peace and solidarity, which was a mechanism for discussing security issues, discussing terrorism issues, discussing refugee issues, and discussing economic cooperation issues. So I think already a lot of work has already taken place in that respect, and I think my own hunch is that the two sides are actually negotiating that mechanisms, and there are still, there may be some areas of disagreement here or there, but they will have to finalize it either by 6th November or maybe in another couple of days they will have to agree on that. If there is no agreement on a mechanism, then I think the prevailing instability between the relations is likely to continue. But I am really optimistic that because there is no way forward in the relations now unless and until the two sides overcome this impediment.
This hurdle
And
this time.
for
Thank you.
Afghan Taliban regime, as now they are controlling Afghanistan state, and they are also part of, they have diplomatic relations with a number of regional countries such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and many other countries apart from neighbors. There is some pressure on Afghan Taliban to enter into this mechanism with Pakistan, because terrorism is not only just Pakistan's concern with Afghanistan. Terrorism is also concern of some other neighbors and regional countries. So I am really optimistic that the two sides will use this opportunity and agree on a mechanism and move forward from here.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador. Waqar Sahab, are you also as optimistic as Ambassador Sahab in this? Because of course, we need there has to be a document that has to emerge, as I understand, from these talks, right?
Yeah, I think I'm in Istanbul, and actually we've been following it very closely. Basically, there is a cautious optimism, and there are reasons for that. I think one reason is that I mentioned was the internal pressure is becoming huge, because ultimately, it's a matter of 40 million Afghans, women and children. It's not very easy just to rule it through barrel of a gun, because then you have to run. The other is, I think, the external and regional pressure, especially of the hosts like Turkish. Turkey's, I think, role has been phenomenal, especially the intelligence chief convincing them. And then comes the Middle East, because not only Qatar, there is definitely, I would say, a quite support for this peace process in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE. And these are, I think, some of the countries where it's not only, I would say, home to Afghan diaspora and foreign exchange remittances, but also in terms of economic aid. So it means that in case the entire region desires it, and then comes the regional countries like Iran, Pakistan, Russia, China, who have either direct or indirect borders, and they are affected by terrorism. Like Tajikistan, throwing the Indian out is now probably a matter of anger that now they're trying to play a dirty game in the region. So similarly, Uzbekistan, and now we have some reports that probably the militias in the north, like Uzbeks, Tajiks, maybe they start regrouping for, let's say, military campaign against the Taliban. So there's huge pressure. So I would generally tend to agree with the ambassador that definitely there is a hope that things would move. That there is also part of information operation which is being done by Indian social media, posing as Afghan media. And then, of course, I would say there are three categories of leadership in Afghanistan. One are maybe having some soft corner for Pakistan. One are like neutral and more, I would say, pragmatic. And then there are spoilers. I would say 30%. And this spoiler, element you can always see, in some of their leadership statements, especially the young ones. And then they are, I would say, bolstered by the Indian social media. 70% of Afghan social media as is visible, which is full of, venom against Pakistan, is operating from Bengaluru and basically Noida. So it means that India would never like. But I am sure that when 6th November comes, things are going to move forward, because for, I think, Afghan government, Taliban, there is much to lose. In case they don't mend fences, I tell you, there's going to be huge pressure. Now, the repatriation of refugees, entire region is definitely doesn't want a war. Even China, common friend. So all told, I think we should be, I would say, cautiously optimistic that things should move in a positive direction.
Do you think that the Afghan Taliban are also cognizant of perhaps taking a step back from the nexus with India?
I don't know, because so far, it appears that probably they feel that Indian, especially intelligence plus, some of their financial support could help them, basically run Afghanistan. As I told you, if you look at the GDP, I'll just give a comparison. It's I think, $17 billion. And it's less than Faisalabad, one city of Pakistan. So all told of these, pomegranates going to Russia, basically is part of the information of. I think in the heart of their hearts, they know it, because, major export and import partner still remains Pakistan, other than, I think, the Gulf region. So it can't be, India can't fly everything. So India would definitely like to spoil. I would say that now looking at the stance, the way India is trying to prop them up, probably it will not be very easy to break this nexus. But I think the saner element in Afghanistan would definitely like to have good relations with Pakistan. And we have just one point agenda: stop terrorism. I think we don't have any territorial claim. Rest is all, I think, in the information domain. It's a matter of survival of regime. And I feel that if Taliban miscalculates, they could lose their regime, actually. So there's huge pressure coming from inside, like Ahmed Masood of the Resistance Front. He's now coming up. We have Abdul Rashid Dostum most probably becoming active in the Uzbek areas. And then Afghanistan is not homogeneous. Even let's say if you look at the Pashtun population, rest are Hazaras, Uzbeks, Tajiks, and Nuristanis and Farsidan belt. So there are a lot of community, and they don't have any representation, much representation in the regime or let's say in the government. So there are, I think, quite a number of challenges for Afghanistan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, Waqar Khan. Thank you for being with us. Of course, I think it's important when they say that, they could, Afghan Taliban, of course, have a lot to lose if they do not deal with this effectively with regard to Pakistan. And, like Waqar Sahab said, it's about, we have one point agenda, really. Stop permeating terrorism into Pakistan territory. And of course, the word is cautiously optimistic at this time. We hope that there will be an end to these talks, a positive end to these talks, where we see a document, a mechanism emerging that tells us how to counter any and all terrorism that comes from that side. Thank you so much for joining us today on Thursday.